There's been a huge amount of interest in this new BYD electric ute, but when it comes to Australia at the beginning of next year, you may actually have two options for powertrain, not just the one, not just electric, but you may be able to buy it with a 1.5 litre turbo petrol engine, so it's a hybrid. Luke Todd confirmed this. It's in discussion whether it's going to come as a hybrid or not. He's the CEO of EV Direct. That's the company that imports vehicles from BYD into Australia. We know almost nothing about the electric version, sadly, but we do have some ideas about price and range, which we'll get into in just a second. But the plug-in hybrid version apparently will come, if it does come, with 800 kilometers of range, according to Luke Todd. Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben Alexander. Thank you for tuning in. Really happy to see so many new subscribers to the channel over this last month or so. It's really nice to know as well that from the comments, people are enjoying the videos. So here in Australia, people love utes. It's iconic in Australia, and some people only drive a ute. They don't have a car at all. All they drive every day is a ute. But basically, there are no electric utes in Australia. We have the LDV ET60 ute, which even though I've seen none on the roads, apparently, after checking this, there are 5,000 or so being driven around in the country. So I don't know where, I haven't seen any, but somewhere. It's ridiculously expensive. It starts at 92,000 Australian dollars, which is something like 80,000 US dollars or something like that, 75 maybe. And it only has a range of 330 kilometers, whilst not even carrying anything or towing, which is a bit of a thing I'll get to in this video. So it's not exactly a bargain. The BYD could change things a little bit because people love BYD vehicles in Australia. They've shown that. They're selling like crazy. So I can imagine the ute is going to go really, really well, especially because it looks kind of like a Ford Ranger, I think. But really, all we know is that they aren't afraid to ask for proper money, but they do aim to undercut other companies. I'm talking about the prices around the world in different countries. They've got a tendency to look at, I think, what other people are asking for similar vehicles and then price them slightly a little bit under that. So I'm not just talking about the happy coincidence in Australia recently when the MG4 was released and then they announced the price of the BYD Dolphin 2 days later at $100 less, which apparently that price was locked in for months, but there is speculation on that. I'm sure it's more complex than this anyway. The ute is likely to be around $70,000 to $80,000 in Australia, potentially up to $90,000. Nobody, I think, expects it to be any higher than this. I've run a poll on this too, and basically almost everybody said no more than $90,000. And I think that's a general consensus. So the Chinese delegation did slip out some footage with the ute, and it looks really nice, really, really nice, especially if you like the Ford Ranger. So you can tell that basically it's the size of a Ford Ranger, and a couple of people have already said it looks like a Ford Ranger. So as with all BYD vehicles, they'll likely give it a proper, useful range. I think I just get a sense that BYD are really aware of this. So something like 400 or 500 kilometers of maybe WLTP range, which is most likely means the battery will be 100 kilowatt hour in size or more. The LDV range is 330 kilometers, and that has an 88 kilowatt hour battery. And BYD generally have a good range on their vehicles, so I just sort of have this bit of trust that they're going to put a proper range in it. And I feel like they'll get it right. I could be a bit wrong. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. There aren't any details out there anywhere, so nobody, literally nobody actually knows other than maybe the engineers at BYD. So as much as EVs are great to drive, the range does suffer when towing things, like any petrol or diesel too. So they really will need to put a proper range in this, if you ask me, because it's the one job for this vehicle is to be a utility vehicle. Its name is a ute, so it needs to be a really good utility vehicle. What good is it if the range is too small when it's not even carrying a load? If you can only do, say, 300 kilometers, I just don't think that's good enough at all. People in Australia often tow caravans, for example, long distances, and I'm not sure just how to convey the size of Australia, because it has shocked me in the handful of years that I've been here. You can easily chew through 400 kilometers in Australia and see very, very, very little. So think Route 66 if you're in the US watching this, or if you're in the UK, think about driving from London and then driving all the way north up the motorway and going to Newcastle and only seeing 2 or 3 small towns in the whole trip up there. Obviously, most people live in and around cities, so about 80% of the population here in Australia live in and around a city, but people do often drive between the cities. And I think being able to drive between, say, for example, Brisbane and Sydney, you would need to be able to do about 370 kilometers, start and then finish after about 370 kilometers, have that little buffer of maybe like 15%, and then charge at that halfway point, for example, and have that 15% buffer in case it's broken and you need to travel somewhere else. And then you can carry on and then reach Sydney and that next leg. So I really think the difference between being able to drive halfway to Sydney, for example, is sort of a kind of benchmark. I'll get to this in a second, it is going somewhere. So for all EVs sold in Australia, it's the sort of question that I think a lot of prospective customers will be thinking, because that's what I'd be thinking, you know? So not because I actually think that the halfway point is in some way the key factor or should decide whether you buy it or not, because I properly don't, but I just think that it is going to be one of the boxes, the proverbial boxes that people will want to tick in their own heads when they buy one. You can imagine an old couple considering whether they can drive somewhere in their new electric ute, or if they're thinking about buying it. A lot of older people here in Australia, they do love a good road trip. I mean, they live for it, kind of like old people live for putting the bins out. Old people in Australia, they live for road trips. I see it all the time, all over. As soon as you leave the city, there's loads of people driving around on long cruises with their caravans. Thanks to anybody for joining on Patreon or YouTube memberships, or anybody that has thought about buying me a coffee. Links to these in the description below, as I always say. This allows me to keep on creating my videos, which is, it takes a huge amount of time in thorough research, and I have to contact different companies and confirm things. My mission is to provide you with accurate information that you might not find readily available in the mainstream media. So the easiest way to help, if you're a bit skint, or if you just want to help, press the like button. This shows YouTube that people like the video, and it makes a huge difference because I'm trying to do this as my day job every day. So when you chip in or like the video or subscribe or comment, you're basically helping me spread information to help, to boost the uptake of EVs. So in particular, the cheaper end of the market, which I think we really need to get going. If you're wondering, no, they won't be bringing this ute to the US. A couple of good reasons, I'll get to that. Possibly the UK, we don't know for sure. People do like a good ute in the UK, but basically, because of Trump's tariffs in the United States, it's prohibitively expensive to bring in an electric vehicle from abroad, basically China. So if you brought in an EV from China to the US, you'd pay 27.5% tax on that vehicle. So that's the main reason for BYD not aiming to sell to the US. Other reasons you can speculate on in the comments. I'm always interested in reading that. I've had some really cool comments lately, people putting in their thoughts on why BYD wouldn't be doing very well in Europe, for example, which is kind of mission critical for companies like BYD, I should imagine. This just means Europe is now mission critical, more so because they can't sell in Europe. I think they already knew this, but they've still gone for this global thing anyway, this global mission to sell BYD and other electric companies too from China all over the world. They're doing really, really, really well in China. I don't think people really understand how big the market is in China. More than half of the world's EVs are sold in China right now. So obviously they've committed to going globally. They've invested heavily in moving operations to Europe. The sales in Europe are a bit crap, I think. Some comments on one of my last video, or one of my latest videos at least, really, really interesting on why people in Europe may not want to buy a BYD vehicle. feel free to put your thoughts on this in the comments. Obviously in Europe they do like a good Volkswagen, they love a good Volkswagen, and I kind of get why, I suppose. But they are a bit more expensive than BYD vehicles, typically. Considering the Atto 3, for example, that's 38,000 euros in Europe, compared to something like the ID2, that's 41,000 euros. That's, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if it's your money and it's leaving your bank account, that's 3,000 extra. And if you're not really a brand snob, you wouldn't really, you just think, I want to save me 3 grand, I suppose. There is a sense of loyalty in Europe for some European vehicles. Of course, a lot of them, like Volkswagens, they've been around for years, selling all over the European countries. In recent years, though, I have seen loads of Volkswagens have weird issues. So if you look on the internet, wherever you look for cars for sale, look at all the adverts, it's quite common, you know, to see a Volkswagen that is considerably cheaper with far less kilometers on the odometer. And then when you read the advert, it's very predictable. There's always a gearbox issue or a mechatronics issue or something like that. So I sort of imagine that if that stuff keeps on going, then Volkswagen will have issues in the future. There's a YouTube channel called DW YouTube channel. They've got a few channels actually, but it's a really big organization, I believe. And it's from Germany, which is pretty interesting because it's a German company they're talking about. They made a recent video with a really blunt title, and I just saw it and it kind of caught my attention. And it was something along the lines of, Volkswagens are rubbish these days, when they used to be really good and built to last, or something. They do feel amazing. They really, really, really do. I always thought Volkswagens knew how to make cars look and feel really good. But I genuinely think, after sitting in Chinese vehicles such as BYD, for example, they're comparable in how they feel. When you look at them and the quality of the paint around all the little metal bits and the look and feel of the door when it shuts and the door handle, all the weird little things, I genuinely think BYD vehicles are comparable to Volkswagen. Maybe not as good, but comparable. And it's only a small difference. I don't think there's a big difference in it, which is so impressive, so impressive. And I think so many people, even in the comments in my last videos for the last month, I get comments talking about the quality of Chinese vehicles, and there's still a concern, but I don't really think people understand what level these vehicles are produced at. They're really good quality vehicles. I don't know about all the brands, but I know for sure BYD vehicles are comparable to any other modern good quality electric car that you may consider wanting to go buy if you're maybe into Volkswagens, for example. So if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button for me so that YouTube know that people are enjoying my videos, and subscribe for more daily videos about electric vehicles. I produce videos every single day. I occasionally miss a day. I'm sorry in advance, but I really do try every day to post a video. Thanks very much.